Good morning, Year 7. Welcome back to some more poetry comparison practice. Before we get on to that, I want you to write down the themes of any poem from your study this term that explore the idea of loss, pain or confrontation. For at least one of these poems, write down any quotations that you can remember. Okay, you're going to need a printout of the I've attached the texts. They're not on a PDF actually, they're on 2 Word documents on Classcharts. You need a pen, a highlighter and a pencil and your exercise book. And the title today is Unseen Comparison Practice. Just a reminder, I'm going to be doing this as we move forward through next year to the exam, so that we're all completely familiar with what we're going to see on the day, and that we're not surprised by any of it. So don't worry about it. It's a bit repetitive, but you know, like everything else, the more we read and hear about it, the kind of less scary things become. So poetry is part of the second exam paper you will sit for English literature. So you've got 4 papers in total, 2 language and 2 literature. The second literature paper has the poetry in it. Section A of poetry works in the same way as Section A of paper 1 and Inspector Calls. So part A of your poetry question will be a comparison, which is just saying how like or dislike one poem is with another, of a known text with unseen text. I mean, it will be poetry. So there'll be one of the poems that we've studied, one of the 15s that we've studied, and then the poem you've never seen before. And they'll ask you to compare them. So you've got to use all these skills that we've talked about with language and structure and so on, and it's worth 20 marks. And part B, write about another moment from a poem that connects to the question. So you'll do the comparison, then part B will be writing about another poem from the collection. That's also 20 marks. Okay, don't worry about that. We'll be going over and over that, and you'll be fully prepared when the time comes. Okay, and here's the 2 poems. The one on the right, In Paris with You, is one that we've studied. So you can go back to your notes and use your notes for this. It's not a test in that way. We're practicing comparison skills, so you can use your notes. On the left is a poem called Quickdraw by Carol Ann Duffy, which is the one we're going to be comparing. So I won't read those for now because we've read them before, or certainly In Paris with You we have. And you've got your copies in front of you now of both these poems, I hope. Now, the first thing to do is to look at the unseen poem first. That's going to be the big challenge here, isn't it? Because you've never seen it before. But all you're going to do is you go through the same stages of first reading, second reading, language, structure, all those things that we've done with the 15 poems we've studied in that collection that we know about. So, first reading, get the gist and feel of the poem like we've always done. What's it about? Remember, it'll have similarities to the one that you know. Look at the title. Remember, we always talked about that. And considering anything you can work out before you read the poem. Give yourself time to read over the poem a couple of times. Now that sounds easy, but it's quite easy in an exam situation to become stressed and start not doing it. Reading and not paying attention, or starting to work on it before you've read it and taken it in. It's okay not to understand every word or idea at this point. You're just trying to get a feel for the poem. What is the mood of the poem? Who is speaking? Who are they speaking to? How do they feel? Now, do you recognise those 4 questions? They are the same 4 that we've had with all 15 poems after the first reading. So then you've done that. You can answer those 4. What is the mood of the poem? Who is speaking? Who are they speaking to? And how do they feel? And then your second reading, you can start to annotate ideas, focusing on the specific question you've been asked by the exam paper. So now you understand the speaker's situation and the tone of the poem, you need to read through it again, this time with pencil in hand, ready to annotate your ideas. What can you pick out about how those feelings are presented? What devices does the writer use to convey their feelings? On this second reading, don't forget to comment on form and structure as well as the language used. I mean, look out, see if it's a sonnet. Is it 14 lines long with lines of 10 syllables, or is it free verse where there's no particular structure? And you remember how to work out a rhyme scheme, don't you? So has it got a rigid rhyme scheme or not? And on the third reading, this is where I usually step in to help out. This time the third reading is looking to make connections with the other text. Have they used the same devices but for different effects? Have they used a simile in one to create this type of effect and a simile in the other to create that type of effect? You could compare that, couldn't you, and talk about the language used. Have they achieved the same effects but used different devices to do it? That's much the same thing, but the other way around. Do they present a similar viewpoint about an issue, or is it totally opposite? You're looking for any similarities or differences between the two texts, so you can compare. In this poem, in Paris with You, a broken relationship is shown by the fact that this person's on the rebound with somebody new in Paris. In Quickdraw, a broken relationship is shown because the phones have become like weapons that they use each other. So you would say Paris with You, then you would say however, and then in Quickdraw. Do you see? Have a practice anyway. You've already done some of this, so you're getting better at it. Okay, a bit of preparation before we go on. Make sure you've got a copy of both poems. As I say, I attach them to Classcharts. It might be it might be helpful. Stick these poems into your book side by side. You'll also need to write down the question as a subheading, and the question is: compare the presentation of a broken relationship in Paris with You and Quickdraw. So that last bullet point's the one you write in. That's the question we're answering. Make sure you've got both poems, got all your highlighters and so on. Okay, so start by focusing on the poem you know. This is in Paris with You. So here we are. Don't talk to me of love. That's the opening line. Immediately creates a severe tone. I'm a hostage. It's a metaphor. A hostage suggesting the speaker is trapped in a helpless situation. Down to drink. Plosive alliteration. Plosive just means like a sort of down to drink. You know, it's quite sort of almost explosive. It's also alliterative. Suggests the speaker has dealt with the relationship breakdown in a self-destructive manner through drinking a lot. Wordplay. Talking wounded instead of walking wounded emphasises the pain caused by words. The Louvre, Notre Dame and Champs-Élysées represent a conventional representation of Paris. They're all tourist attractions that tourists would go to, conveying a reluctance of the speaker to accept traditional and stereotypical relationships. Colloquial language, that just means almost, colloquial language is almost like slang. So words like sod, sodding, skip and sleazy are all not the sort of formal language you would necessarily expect to see in poetry. So that shows that skip the Champs-Élysées, the sodding, whatever it was, is being rude about the tourist attractions. He has no respect for them in his current situation. Now, Quickdraw. Think about the poem. First of all, make sure you read it through once just to get the gist of it. That's what's it about. How does the speaker feel? Read through and pick out anything you might comment on that relates to the question, how does Duffy show her experience of broken relationships? Well, phones like guns. It's a simile demonstrating the pain that words can cause. Reference to everyday objects that represent communication. I twirl the phone and squeeze the trigger of my tongue. Deliberately hurtful. Words causing injury. Connotations of defence, perhaps. So maybe she's, defending herself against someone. Alliteration. Time, tone, twirl, then tongue, trigger, reflecting the fast pace of an impulsive argument. It's like two people having an argument, the tone of this poem. You've wounded me. That's very confrontational. High noon, calamity, hard liquor. In the old Last Chance Saloon, it's an extended metaphor. It's from Western films, the Wild West, to indicate a difficult relationship, struggle for power in an argument, like a gunfight in the Wild West. Read the silver bullets of your kiss, imagery which indicates that even the delicate and loving action has the potential to cause great pain. So make your own notes and borrow mine. Now here we are. Here's the bit that we need to, where we start to sort of put it all together. You can see you've got your list of things from each poem, and you can see by the arrows there what the ones that you could compare. So just for an example, we've got wordplay. Talking wounded instead of walking wounded emphasises the pain caused by words. And then you've wounded me, confrontational tone, pain caused through words. So you could say in Paris with you, wounded is used as a sort of when you're talking about walking wounded. And then in Quickdraw, you've wounded me. However, in Quickdraw, you've wounded me. Okay, so I'll let you stop the display there and have a look at it, take it in, and those arrows are showing you which parts of each poem you could compare. Okay, here's a paragraph that I've done. Some connected ideas and turn them into a comparative paragraph. So have a look at that. Both Fenton and Duffy present their experience of a broken relationship as something that is painful and hard to endure. I think we can all agree with that. The speakers in both poems use defence mechanisms, they're sort of defending themselves, in order to protect themselves from future hurt. In Quickdraw, the use of the extended metaphor of the Wild West is described as a calamity, where the speaker is keen to defend themselves by being the first to twirl the phone, then squeeze the trigger of their tongue. The use of alliteration here quickens the pace in which the speaker must act to cause the hurt rather than to receive it. Their words likened to the pulling of a trigger of a gun capable of causing great harm, whereas the speaker of In Paris with You is also aware harm words can cause in a broken relationship. I'm one of your talking wounded. So you will go on, that's the quote there, I'm one of your talking wounded. You will go on to analyse that quote and compare it to the quotation in the first part of the paragraph. Now, I hope I haven't sort of swamped you with too much information there. But here's the key. Here's the key thing that you have to do today. You have to look at the question that we're working on and write one paragraph comparing Quickdraw to In Paris with You that answers that question. That's what I want you to do, and I want everyone to do it so that I can have a look at it and see where we are with it. All right, so I've been very impressed with the work that I've been receiving. It's been brilliant. Keep it up. I know this is a tough ask doing this poetry remotely, but most of you are getting on really well with it. Actually, I'm impressed. So this task at the end here is the one I want you to send me. Good luck with that. Enjoy it, and I shall speak to you next time. Thanks for your time.